Welcome to WHACHACHA'S Wargaming Journey. My name is Sweetness WHACHACHA, and this is episode 4 for the love of books. As a younger man, I liked them, but I found spending $50 on a thick hardcover art book and looking through it once or twice wasn't the best use of my meager funds. But as an adult, with a little more means at this time of my life, I find it very enjoyable. I recently watched a movie about the D&D Dungeons and Dragons art, and I purchased this book, and just the nostalgia of I got myself a nice hot cup of tea, and I'm drinking that and looking through the book, and it was very, very enjoyable. I had another hardcover of the Conan game, and I'm a huge Robert E. Howard Conan fan, and reading through that and looking at how they painted the figures up and stuff, I quite enjoyed. Battlefront, that does Flames of War, the game I'm kind of going through right now with, they did Dust Tactics. They had some books of hardcover books for that game when they took over that and did a newer edition of that. And just looking through those pictures and seeing, those dioramas and stuff as you read was quite enjoyable. So my first jumping off point into Flames of War was really to buy a couple of the books. As I'm starting, in the last episode, we talked about getting into North Africa. So I bought, of course, the Flames of War rule book, which is the best starting point, right? Nice hardcover rule book. And this is a purchase that I sort of regretted because I think this is something like maybe $30, maybe a little more. And every single thing that you can buy from them, they're going to give you a full color, smaller version of. So it is nice to have the hardcover. I do, as I say, really enjoy that, but maybe it could have been spent on some units and things instead. I also bought the North Africa forces, and this book has 4 different things in it. It has the Germans, the Americans, the British, and the Italians, and it kind of gives you 4 of these books that were in another edition, updates them for 4th edition, which is the edition I'm playing in, and has the whole complete thing right here. So I'm ready to, with those 2 books, I'm ready to sort of dive in. So I kind of enjoyed that process. So my wife had got me this tablet. Oh, that's kind of weird. So with a hot cup of tea, couple of hardcover books spread out on the table, I put my little tablet up, which my wife got me for Christmas last year or the year before. I'm like, I didn't want this, I didn't need it, but I find it's quite handy while I'm modeling and cutting things out and painting things. I can have either music or tutorials or whatever on this thing. It's quite a useful little thing. But anyway, had a little music on there, my cup of tea, and a pad with which I can start to kind of go through and make some notes and things. And then, of course, these books. So I didn't really read too much into the rules themselves as I listened to some tutorials, and I wasn't ready yet to play. And I feel like I'm going to forget a lot of this stuff. But mainly I wanted to find out what kind of force I was going to build so that I could buy those things and start painting and molding, getting all that stuff kind of prepared. So in an earlier episode, I had discussed Battlefront and being this company that really helps the ease of play and helps you guide you into this game. And these books are wonderful. So I'm sipping my tea, I start into the book, and I look at the wonderful maps and the very pulled back view of these conflicts in North Africa, and I'm reading about them and I'm finding that interesting. Then I continue on, and you get to see what the actual armies looked like. And that, of course, is the basis that they used to abstract and pull back and make their actual army lists. Have you not really played sort of war games before? Basically, they assign a certain point value to different units. Of course, the better the unit, the more points they're going to cost. And so you have to kind of decide what you're going to take in your army. Now, looking at these formations and things that they've kind of built, you have to take certain units in certain ways, and that's kind of to keep you from cheesing the game, right? And buying like 1 million low-cost, soldiers or whatever, and just flooding the battlefield. What Napoleon said, quantity is a quality all of itself, right? So it's kind of pushing you to do certain things, both in the historical aspect, which I love that they show the formations and things here based on that historical information, but also to make an actual balanced game. Now they also show you, if you kind of skip to the end of each of the sections, so if you're looking at the Germans here, it will show you the catalog. It'll show you the units, and you can kind of look at the unit card and things and look at how many points and stuff and how many you have to take to, legally field this army. But then when you get towards the back of there, you're going to find the catalog, and you're going to see the actual, miniatures that they have that you can buy to play this army, and they all match their numbers and things like that. It makes it very, very easy to do so. Now, of course, we have to look at a couple of things. If I was playing this game competitively, then it would be a completely different story. I'd be trying to find, what I thought would be the best army, and what units and things were gonna just be the best at winning the game. Now, luckily, I think maybe I'm missing something here. Of course, I am definitely missing part of that, but I'm gaining in another area, because I'm playing this just myself and just to understand these conflicts better and enjoy and kind of play that whole thing out and just live in this little world, a bit of escapism. And so I don't have to worry about that stuff. So what I'd like to do is I want to make sure I have a variety of units that doesn't have to be a competitive, tournament winning list or anything. I just want to make sure I have enough units and things so it feels like that army would have felt, or as close to it as you can get in a tabletop game. And I want some varieties. I want some planes. Planes are not, I've read or listened to some stuff that have said that the aircraft in this game, they're unreliable, and because of that, they're not, will they come in and will they won't come in. But it's just another neat little flavor thing for me, more thematic, more interesting, and I want those options. And even though it's not the best for a tournament, it's good for me to be able to, for enjoyment purposes. So I want some, oddball units and things, and I look through the book and I think, I'd like to field some of that and that and that. But I also have to worry about, of course, I can't just buy everything I want. And so I kind of made a little plan as to how I was going to approach this. Now, whenever you look at games like this, any kind of living game, lifestyle game, there always is some kind of jumping on point. I'll use, Marvel Crisis Protocol is a Marvel-based game that I have a lot of stuff for. And so you can buy, it's like $100 for the box to play to get into the game. And you get 10 models. They're very well sculpted, you got to glue them together and stuff. But that's a whole jumping up point of $100. It gives everything you need to play and those 10 models. But normally, 2 models in a 2-model pack will cost you something like $30 to $40. So you can see that it's way cheaper to get into the initial box. And so they like to leave these less expensive sort of gateways into the game. And this game is no different. And so what I decided to do was I was going to just do Americans versus Germans in the desert. Now, ideally, of course, Britain and Germany were fighting back and forth in North Africa, and that's a huge part of it. And then, of course, the Italians were a big part of that conflict. And then, of course, we left North Africa and went into Italy and started, fighting the Italians there. But I cannot buy 4 huge armies. And so I decided what I would do was start with just 2 Germans and Americans. Now, because they make these cheap jump-off points that are really good bang for your buck, what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to look at, they have a army starter box for the Africa Corps for Germans, and then they have it's the DAC Panzer Company is what it's called. I'm looking at it now. And then they have the Americans as well, a bunch of Shermans and things, tanks for that. So they have a box for that. And then they have something called Kasserine, which has units from both of those armies, Germans and Americans in North Africa. So what I did was I looked at the sum total of models that I was going to get out of that. I wrote them all down, and then I went through and looked at some of the formations and things in the book, and I figured out what legal armies I could make based on buying those 3 products. Then what I did was I looked, okay, I have holes here, I need to get a few units here and there, and then there's a few units that I want to buy for interest and to keep the variety good, and just, some units that I just think they look really cool. For instance, like, I'd like to have some Jeeps. I'd like to put some Jeeps in there. I'd like to paint them up. I'd like to have, like, those airplanes that I mentioned, some artillery pieces and things. So I just looked through and handpicked a few of those, and I made a list so that I could field a German army and so that I could field an American army. And basically the least expensive way that I could, while also satisfying those needs. And so that was kind of a nice way to go through it, look at those formations, and make that army, figure out what I needed to bolster that to make it an actually legally playable army, because I want to make sure the game is balanced. It's made that way on purpose. And also because they did such a great job of saying, hey, this is why, we made this army this way. The other nice thing is in the catalog, they actually have a catalog number assigned to each of those things, like GBX105 or whatever the case may be. And so I was able to write those down, and then I could look up specifically those if I wanted to order them. And I had a birthday recently, and my wife was kind enough to see my interest in this, and she bought me the Colors of War book, which I kind of thought like, well, do I really need this thing? And I probably wouldn't have bought it on my own, but when I had got it as a gift and I was looking through it enjoyably, as I say before, there's quite a lot of interesting information in here. One of the cool things, again, they have the painting guides for each of the units, but they go through historically and they show, various things about the tanks and things and how they came off the line and by year and what painting changes they made and historical like tidbits they might have had in there, which I think is fascinating. So both I can paint my units and my tanks in a way that I find is historically accurate and also an interesting journey to learn about, which is part of the idea of this whole process. Well, like for instance, one of these things here, they have the cross here on the tanks in the German units, and they said that when Germany invaded Poland in 1939, its armored vehicles displayed a large white cross as the national emblem, which proved to be an excellent, highly visible aiming point for Polish anti-tank gunners. German crews quickly tried to partially obscure it by smearing on mud or oil, which, I mean, even that's a very fascinating, interesting, noteworthy, like at a dinner party or whatever. I always like to read stuff and pass it on to people and stuff. Just, it's full of like interesting facts like that really make this whole thing enjoyable. But I think where this book really finds interest for me personally is in the numbering. So looking at, like, for instance, this German tank numbers, they show you exactly how the tanks were numbered and which company and stuff. I mean, I wouldn't have known where to start with this. So if my father or a grandfather was in World War II, I could find exactly his unit or something or someone I knew and be able to put tank numbers and stuff specifically to that, which is fascinating. I mean, you have all these decal sheets that you can purchase as well, but it also shows you, exactly how they're labeled all over the tank. Its weight, its divisional symbol, which platoon it's in, and all this. So it's that's very interesting to me, so that you can actually make, has the Africorps palm, for these units, the captured crosses, all these little symbols and things that you can add, so you can do a little more research and also, accurately label your tanks instead of just smacking some random number on the side of it. So I found that to be absolutely fascinating. So this Colors of War book ended up being very, very wonderful, and it's going to be a very good addition to, not just because I've not really used the decals before in my own miniature painting and stuff. I've done a ton of it miniature painting, but I've never actually put on any decals, so that's going to be sort of an extra little enjoyment for me. So this Colors of War book I thought was a very, very worthwhile purchase, and again, I think I would have just passed it by otherwise, but I'm very glad I've got it. Again, tons of information about the painting jobs and stuff. So yeah, so now I've got one step further on my journey. I know which forces I'm going to pick. I've got the tools with which to understand what I'm going to paint them and stuff. I've got the product numbers to make legally interesting, legal armies in terms of the game, mechanically interesting, historically accurate, and watching that budget. So I've managed to come up with a couple of forces. And again, these are not going to be tournament legal, but I'm not going to be doing that. I'm just going to be playing on my own. It is interesting, for me, in my past, I played some X-Wing, and I used to fence, and I remember, I thought, when I would go to the fencing club for a few hours, I would just fence for hours and hours and hours and hours until I was exhausted. And then we went to a tournament somewhere, and I wasn't really that interested, but I'll try this out. I remember took 10 hours, drive out there, and I played 1 or 2 matches. I fenced for 10 minutes totally, and I was like, why would I have done this? I basically, it was very... not very good a ratio of fencing to not fencing, and that's just really and my personality and what I like to do. I don't need to prove myself to anyone. I just want to enjoy myself, and so those things are not generally available, interesting to me, the tournament scene and stuff like that. So I find that I just want to enjoy things. So so I can pick and field some of those units and things like that are not necessarily tournament worthy lists. So yeah, so there's my 4th episode. Thanks for joining me and watching. And you can comment below if you like. I'm terrible at social media and anything, so I do apologize for that. But again, I'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode.